self-taught on guitar. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's very true. I did teach myself, and I had my grandmother taught me a few chords, but mostly I just, I loved it so much that I just, right off the bat, it was a passion for me. At 9 or 10 years old, I just, it just developed into a passion overnight almost, and I never stopped playing since then.
Was it pretty much a process of just playing along to records to teach yourself?
Yeah, yes, that's true. When you hear, when I was in my teens, when I would hear a song on the radio, which they were everywhere, Sea Cruise, and songs like that that you just loved right off the bat, and Elvis's tunes, That's All Right, Mama, and some of those things. You had to learn them right then. If you had the passion, which I did, you had to learn those things right then. You just had to,
Yeah.
So I worked on it hard, and that's what it takes anyway. If you're going to be successful at learning anything, you have to really love it. I've given a lot of guitar lessons back in the past, way back past, when I was a little leaner than I am today, and the kids used to come in and they'd bring a guitar and they'd say, "I want to play like Def Leppard." And I would say, do you know what strings or which ones are the E and F and G and all that? No, I just want to play like Van Halen. Well, you got a long way to go. And but that wasn't the case if you had a real genuine passion to play the guitar, and I did. And so I began to entertain people with it when I was 12, 13, 14, and then I did a stint in the Army after high school, and it's 6 months. And when I came back to college, and I once I got enrolled, I organized a band right off the bat, and we began to play for different college beer busts and things like that, and whatever anyone that would hire us, or ask us to play, we would play. And the bass player, Jim Grant, and Norman Uzell, the rhythm guitar player, had no knowledge of the guitar and a bass guitar and a six string, and so I loved it so much that I took the time to, I'm doing a lot of back patting here, but I took the time to teach them what I knew, and before I knew it, we had a pretty good band. So then we decided to go down to Dallas and to play in some clubs, see what it was like. Well, you didn't have to be great to play in clubs in Dallas in the 60s. And so we were successful in landing a job, and we played for like 6 months every night almost, sometimes 5 and 6 sets a night. And lo and behold, we got pretty good, And so from there, one of the clubs we played in, we were discovered, if you will, by a rich insurance salesman, and not a salesman, he owned an insurance company, and he had a son who wanted to be in the rock business, so they asked us to sign up, so we did, and we were excited as heck, and so we began to record immediately. This guy had the money, the insurance guy had the money to send us to Nashville, and we recorded some songs, and they were pretty awful. And so then we just got a tape recorder and stealed ourselves away in some old insurance offices, and we would play original songs that we thought we could do well, and played them back. And we did that ad nauseum, over and over and over and over. We developed a pretty good original sound, and of course the charts were clogged up with the British influence at that point, and they were all great songs, and so we held out that we could do that as well. We wanted to do that as well, and so we named ourselves the Five Americans because there was so much. The top 10 was full of all British band members. So we finally wrote a song called "I See the Light." Yeah. Do I need to take a break here, or am I just drumming on?
No, you're going fine. You're going fine.
Okay. We decided to write. We wrote a song called "I See the Light," and that was our first hit record. It didn't go worldwide, but in America it was a pretty big hit. It's in like number 19, something like that, which was pretty good. But we still didn't bust the top 10, and so but it got us enough success to play on tour with different people like Glenn Campbell and others, and Beach Boys. We did a tour with them, and but anyway, I'll leap ahead a little bit. We were in Washington State, and at that point in time, we were driving to all the gigs, and we were driving back to Tacoma, and I looked up and saw a sign that said Western Union, and I hadn't thought about this before, but I got to thinking about it. It was a long drive back to Dallas. So when we got back, I told the other two guys, the writers, I said, what if we wrote a song, a Dear John letter? In America, that meant, that's a goodbye letter, and to some poor guy. And I said, what if we wrote it and it was sent by a telegram instead of a Dear John letter? And that was kind of low tech, So we talked to our manager about it, and he liked the idea. And we went down to Tyler, Texas, where a lot of Kitty in the Skies was recorded, and a lot of other songs that made it to the top 10. And we recorded it probably in an hour. And we thought, what could we do that would sound like a telegraph, going off? And so we came out with a and that proved to be so commercial that Western Union went from nothing to the top 20 almost overnight. And I understand we had a group over in Australia that recorded it as well.
Yeah, the Strangers. Yeah,
the Strangers. Yes, and yeah. I think they had a number 1 or top 10 before we did in Australia. But I think we eventually did. But anyway, all this time, our real reason for playing music at that point in time was to get around the British influx. And so as the Five Americans, we were released on our first really big hit record as the Five Americans. And number 1, I think, was Nancy and Frank Sinatra. They had a song called Something Stupid. And then Eleanor Rigby, that was number 2 by the Beatles. And I think we were number 3 or 4. And like the third week we released it. And it stayed up there in the top 5 for several weeks. And we had really good success, and it really pushed us off into the successful part of the music business. And so we began writing songs. Of course, the disc jockeys and the managers and the corporate people wanted us to keep writing those songs like Western Union. That's a goose that laid the golden egg. And so we tried that with some songs like Stoplight and a Telegraph or something. I forget now, but we were. You just can't really, go back home again. You can't. So we started to kind of branching out on our own, and we wrote a song called "Evil Not Love" and a "Sound of Love," and we made all those songs made it to the top 40, and they were never as successful as Western Union, but it got us on Bandstand and Chivalry. Those are some old TV shows I'm sure you're kind of aware of.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of that. Whatever town we would go to, Dick Clark would call our manager and say, after their gig, could they come over and tape a song for me? And we did that. We were on Dick Clark 5 or 6 times. So we were kind of in the big time, We got a really good taste of it. I'll let you say a further.
So
you probably got some questions.
Yeah, sure. So once you'd recorded Western Union and before it was released, were you pretty confident that you had a hit single on your hands there?
Yeah, when we heard the commercial part of it, we were listening to that part of it. The verses aren't all that creative, but the little dit-dits in there were just, we didn't know it at the time. We liked it. We thought that was pretty clever, but we didn't know it was going to be such a commercial success. That was the cause, was the dit-dits. And we heard some songs later on in the late 60s where that sound was copied, and that's always a compliment when someone copies your music or whatever creative thing you're doing. So
now you were previously known as the Mutineers. Do you think the success would have still come if you'd remained as the Mutineers? Do you think the name change to the Five Americans was significant enough to bring that success?
I think that the Western Union tune that was unstoppable. It was just bound to be a top 10, top 5 record, and there was no really way around it. And no matter what we've been called, we might have had a little. A little more easier time if we'd named ourselves something else. But our manager insisted, and he had us under contract. We really didn't have a choice in the matter. Because he was looking at it from his standpoint, And we're there for a while. We were one of the hardest working bands in show business. We played everywhere, all over the United States, and sometimes 20 days out of the month. And I think as a quick story, we named ourselves the Mutineers, and the first job we got in Dallas was in a club, which is legendary now, at least to Americans in Dallas. And it was the Pirates. It was named the Pirates Nook. The club was, and we were the Mutineers. So it kind of fit like a puzzle.
Good match.
Yeah, purely accidental.
Yeah. Now you got to work with the great Dale Hawkins in the studio, who produced the band. How did you find him to work with?
He was good. He was very. He had a lot of energy. Of course, he had Susie Q and a couple of other pretty big hits, and he was just sort of an old Louisiana boy that he was excited about, very excitable. And he loved the music business, and we got to be very close. In fact, I spoke with Dale before he passed, and it's been a couple of 3 years back, and he was still at it. He was still doing music.
Yeah, I actually interviewed Dale myself not long before he passed, and he spoke very highly of you guys.
Oh, that's great. I speak very, very highly of him because he had some good ideas, and kept us on the path in the studio. So he earned his money.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned your management earlier. John Abner was your manager. What kind of operator was he?
He was. He signed us to a contract that was much like many contracts in the '60s for young guys like us, and it called for. It was probably a 30-page contract, and it ended up so that he would end up getting our publishing and our royalties, and that went on for a long time, and he was that hard to work with, and so we just there's not a lot we could do. We just wanted to play music, and we like a lot of bands back then. If we could play music and get some girls interested in us and some groupies, we could, and we were happy. We didn't worry about the money, although we should have. And but it ended up in the end. When he passed, we got his wife gave us all of the rights back to all of our songs.
Oh,
so,
wonderful!
Yeah, good ending, happy ending.
So you were cheated out of quite a bit of money that was due to you. When did you suspect that things weren't quite right in that area?
Well, after the excitement of having a couple of hits passed, we started thinking about, we're still driving the same model cars, and we're still eating, in the diners and things like that. So we went up to ask him up to his offices and ask him for some money, so we'd like to get a check or something. And he denied that and would not give us any money. And so we began to catch on right then. That was after about 5 or 6 years of being under contract to Abner. And so we started getting suspicious at that point. And also, we were no longer 19-year-old kids. We were now 25 and 26 years old, some of us, and we were kind of getting mature and wanted to be in the business and not just necessarily just play music, but to be able to be in it to win it, and make some money and drive big cars and do what other guys were doing in the business. So, but he was there was no getting. We actually even took him to court in Dallas to get him to pay us, and we still couldn't because there were no music laws in Texas at the time. So maybe a boxing match passed court thing to rule on, or something, but nothing musical. There were no, hit groups in Texas to speak of, except us. And so we lost in court, and we did all we could do. And so we just, we finally, that's what kind of broke us up, was that we weren't getting all the success that we deserved, was we weren't getting paid the way we should. He did put us on a salary each, but the way that read was that was an advance, and that was not uncommon back then for many groups. The record company would advance you some monies, and you never got those paid off. You never got that. It stayed in the red all the time. And when you asked for money, he would say, "Well, you still owe me $40,000 or something like that." And we were just guys, from Oklahoma, and we didn't know what to do. We did hire an attorney. We did go to court, but the judge, the first day of court, the judge said, "Well, first thing I see is a contract, a binding contract, everybody's name on it. Everybody signed it." So, and that was it. That was all we got. That was about as far as we got.
Yeah.
So, we didn't have our own personal monies to pay for attorneys and things like that. So, and so his son had a little bit of success, and that's what the whole record company was about, was for his son, actually. And he had a modicum of success. he had one song called "Do It Again" a little bit slower, and I think it made top 20. It's hard to remember some of this, but that was his goal all along. And so, we literally broke up and went our separate ways in about 69, 68, and that was kind of the end of that group. And we were all kind of grown up after that anyway. So,
but I guess at the time there would have been a lot of groups in a similar situation to yourself. It was still a relatively new industry, and a lot of groups probably didn't even know what they were signing when they were signing their initial contracts.
Well, the whole thing was, God, look at us, we're signing a recording contract. What more do you want? So that's the way we were, Oh my gosh, I can't believe we've been in town 6 months. We've got a recording contract, So. Yeah, those guys are out there. We're out there. There's always a colonel, somebody, or a John Abner, or somebody that was willing to take your talent, exploit
absolutely.
It. So that's the way that went.
Have you ever wondered or pondered how your career may have turned out had you been under more scrupulous and upstanding management?
I think we would have. I don't think it would have been a lot longer success. It would have been we would have had probably more. We would probably had a couple of 3 or 4 top 5s. So and we probably would have gotten some money for it, which would have been unbelievable. And but since he passed away, that's been probably I kept count, but it's probably been 10, 15 years ago. We've received some pretty good paydays as writers in the group. Tom Cruise's movie Vanilla Sky used it in the movie. That was a pretty big payday. Those are $10,000-$20,000 paydays. So, and also BMI, Broadcast Music Inc. pays me once, all the writers once every quarter. And some of the checks are very, very good, and I'll be getting them for my lifetime, and my kids will be getting them since Congress passed a law about 10 years ago that said that you cannot own someone else's music, and they own it once they've released it under their name for 70 years plus. So my kids will get, my inheritance of that, and they'll be getting, and my wife, who's a little bit younger than me, will get it until she passes. So like I said, it had a happy ending, really.
Yeah.
And I got to do what I was born to do. That's write and play music.
Yeah.
So,
very true.
You can look at the bad part all you want, but it doesn't do any good. So
it took time, but it's all turned out well in the end.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's interesting talking to an Australian, and what time is it? 11 o'clock in the morning over there?
Yeah, it's Friday morning here. Yeah, so it's just on 11 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the band is mostly known for Western Union. The band is synonymous with that song. Does it bother you if you ever see the Five Americans labelled as a one-hit wonder?
Well, certainly not in America, because we had. If you look at it on the internet, we had at least 4 more tunes that that charted big, and we don't know how big because we never got paid for them. But they were top 40 hits in America, and our manager he didn't care about pushing us, overseas. He was making plenty off of us right here at home. So, why would he pay for us to get on American Airlines and fly to Australia or England? And it didn't make good monetary sense to him, and we couldn't do anything about that. But over here, some of the most requested songs that I've been asked about were the fourth that followed, "Sound of Love." In fact, I just heard on YouTube. There's a Dick Clark Saturday morning show was playing "Sound of Love." So that's you hit it pretty big whenever Dick Clark was playing your records on
Sure.
Bandstand.
Yeah.
So I'm sure in the far reaches of the music business, we may be looked at as a one-hit wonder, but we know we weren't, and that's all that matters. That's all that
Yeah.
matters.
Absolutely. So when the group did split up, did you know right away what you wanted to do with the next phase of your career?
Well, yeah, I did. I really did. Uh, my mother and father were school teachers all their lives and retired as school teachers. And all of a sudden, one morning, I was living in Hollywood, and it just hit me. I think where's the dog? Where's the fireplace? Where's the wife? Where's the kids? At my knee. And I said, that's got to be another feeling altogether. So I drove back to Dallas, and from there back to my home, and just across the state line into Oklahoma. And I had 2 years of college, so I finished 2 more years and graduated with a bachelor's degree and a master's degree eventually. And got married, met the girl of my dreams, and got married, and it's been a great marriage, and she's been kind to me, and it's been just a wonderful life. I ended up as over here they're called principals, the administrative, I don't know what they're called there, but
Yeah, they're the same principles.
and yeah, I was a principal for about 15 years in administration, so I got to wear a tie to work like everybody else, and and I enjoyed that life. I like kids, and I kind of got that from my mom and dad, and I retired with a good retirement. My wife retired with me with a good retirement, and gosh, I don't have any complaints, really.
Yeah. Were your students aware of your rock star past?
Well, by the time I had graduated from my last 2 years of college and landed a job as a principal, most of the kids, I was in the elementary section in the junior high, and most of those kids, they're not raised on 60s tunes. They should be, but they're not. And their mothers and dads know who I am, that I was successful in the music business. But the kids, the 14, 15, 16-year-olds, they just look at you kind of funny if you say you. And so, yeah, that's the way that was. So I'm living in Oklahoma City now, and taking care of myself and enjoying my retirement.
Wonderful. You wrote a memoir of your life and times with the band. How did you find that experience putting all that together?
Well, it's I guess a writer is a writer because I wrote four novels, published novels after that, but I enjoyed that because it was a way to say it all in print. It was a little bit like standing on the courthouse steps naked because all of it's not very pretty. Some of it isn't at all. And, we went through the drug thing, and we went through the getting cheated thing, and a lot of things that, aren't as wonderful as they sound. And, I found that to be pretty relaxing to sit and write about it all. And I just decided that I was going to tell it. I was not going to keep my readers when I wrote it, but I was just going to tell it just like it was. And like I said, some of it's not very pretty. But and if you were living there. I was living in a small town when I wrote that, of about 15,000 people, and I got some looks. I can tell you. After people read that book. So I enjoy writing. I used to sit down and just start writing, 80,000 words in no time and tell a pretty good story. So I enjoyed it.
So what about the guitar, Mike? You still pick up the guitar from time to time?
Time to time. I had a very light stroke in November of last year, and I've made I won't say 100% recovery, but I made pretty much a 90% recovery. But it left my left hand a little, uncoordinated, and it does affect the way I play. And I'm not as I can't be as slick as I used to be, but I can still beat out a few chords, and I do that for my own amazement and for my family or whoever asks me to.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. And
Yeah,
just before I let you go, if you could sit down with a young musician just starting out, what would be the best bit of career advice you could give them?
Well, I would say check yourself and see if it is, as I brought it up before, if it's a passion with you, or is it just something that you think is cool and would like to be able to do, and are not willing to put the time in. And you know that pretty quickly, because learning the guitar is not easy, and it's hard on you physically and on your fingers, and a lot of kids unfortunately give up, before, because they don't get that instant gratification. You got to sit and bang away at it, and that's what I did for years, and that's what enabled me to. I was pretty much a natural too. That helps. So I say do a self-assessment and make sure you might need to see if you're on the natural side of playing music, or if you have the passion for it. And then if you do, go for it.
Great advice. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute treat to speak with you. You're an absolute gentleman. I do wish you a long and happy retirement, and thank you so much for all the music.
Thank you, John. I enjoyed it. I appreciate being on your show, and maybe we'll talk again before it's all over.
Yep, let's hope so. All the best.
All the best to you, John.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.